Hey everybody, Shoebox Legends here. Very happy and excited to be back with the second installment in a running series here on the channel dubbed Hockey 101. It's exactly what it sounds like for those who are not too familiar with hockey cards or maybe are just getting into the sport and want to learn a little bit more. This is supposed to be kind of a running series of like educational videos about the hockey card hobby. And in the first installment, if you missed it, I'll try to leave a link below if I think of it. But in the first episode, I did kind of a brief overview of the history of hockey cards from all the way back in the early 20th century, right up until present day. And I broke it out into kind of 5 eras of hockey cards. In today's installment, we're going to take a little bit of a side channel here, as you can see by the note card in the background. Only the highest technology, artwork, and special effects here at Shoebox Legends. We are going to dive into the WHA, the World Hockey Association. This was a pretty cool thing that developed in the wild 1970s. And basically what happened here is a rival league to the NHL was formed called the WHA. And this was kind of spurned on by the same 2 guys who started the ABA in basketball a few years earlier. And this was kind of their MO. They would challenge, established leagues. They saw like a monopoly on the sport of professional ice hockey here in the States. And they got some investors involved and started up their own upstart hockey league. Now, this league, for lack of a better term, and I try to keep it PG here, but this league was kind of a shit show. Throughout the 70s, it really struggled to stay in existence. Teams were going bankrupt all the time. It was completely wild. There were fights and arrests, and the tale of this league is really something in and of itself. But for today, we're going to focus on the hobby of WHA hockey cards. And surprisingly to me, I don't know if you'd see this nowadays, but when the WHA started out, and they lured in a few big names to kind of gain some credibility, and WHA did release for quite a few years of the league's existence WHA hockey cards. And those came in various different formats, which we're going to look at in today's episode. Now, the league was founded and began in the 1972 season. And it lasted or folded up after the 78-79 season. So it existed for, just seven years of competition. And in each of those years, it was a little bit different in terms of how the sport was treated or the league was treated with respect to hockey cards. So for the very first year in 1972, O-Pee-Chee actually made WHA hockey cards as a part of their base flagship, NHL hockey set. And so these were released in a high number series. So the regular NHL O-Pee-Chee cards in 72 go all the way up to I think it's card number 289. And then starting at card number 290, we get these WHA cards. So these are, obviously non-NHL teams. These are the teams from this upstart league. And O-Pee-Chee actually included them in their regular flagship hockey release just right after the NHL players. Which was pretty crazy. They never did that again. This is the only year that they did that in 72, 73. These aren't super desirable cards because many of them are players that didn't pan out. Highlights of this set here would be there is a Bobby Hull, who was the biggest player lured away from the NHL. He signed a $2.7 million contract to play in the WHA, which was the most ever paid to a hockey player at the time. And was, newsworthy, not just in the world of sports, but just in general. He's on the checklist. Also, Jerry Cheevers, the longtime Bruins goaltender who had just won 2 Stanley Cup championships with the team. He is in the release. What I have here is just a Fred Speck, and I chose to show this one because of the great team, the Minnesota Fighting Saints. So the WHA had some pretty wild team names. Only 1 or 2 of the teams, I think, lasted for the entire 7-year existence of the league, which really tells you something. Some others came and went. There were constantly bankruptcies and migrations of franchises to different cities and, all kinds of drama and financial problems that kind of plagued the league from its very inception until its demise. But this is a cool card here from the very first set of, or subset in this case, of WHA hockey cards. So I think there is something, I should have looked it up before the video, but There are something like 50 or 60 of these high number WHA cards in the 72 O-Pee-Chee set. It is a long-term hobby collecting goal of mine to get all of them, and I do have quite a few others that I would like to show off someday, but we'll keep that to a separate video in the future because today is supposed to be really an overview of the league. So after that first season, where O-Pee-Chee included the cards at the end of their normal checklist, the following season, O-Pee-Chee did not produce any WHA cards at all. They just skipped that year. I'm not sure what the reasoning or rationale was behind skipping it, but one company did sort of fill in its place and produce a set of WHA cards in 1973, and that was actually, believe it or not, let me get this example out, that was Quaker Oats, the consumer food company. They produced cards that looked like this, and this is a 1973 Quaker Oats WHA featuring John French of the New England Whalers in a 6.5. So pretty cool card there. These were distributed in Quaker Oats food products in the 1973 to 74 winter and spring. They were actually issued in panels. So you would get 5 of these attached in a panel. And I think I do have an unbroken panel somewhere. But for the purposes of today's video, just brought out this single card, which I picked up recently for like $9 on eBay because no one really cares much about the WHA, even though I find it fascinating. So pretty cool Whalers card there. And of course, this is the New England Whalers franchise that went on to become the Hartford Whalers after the league folded in the late 70s. So, the teams came and went throughout the existence of the WHA, but at the end of it, when the league collapsed, only 4 teams survived that collapse and were merged into the NHL for the 1979 season. And we'll talk about that a little bit more towards the end of the video. So Quaker Oats it was in 1973. For the next year, the third year of the campaign, O-Pee-Chee did release a set once again. So pretty cool. This is the look of the 74 set. And of course, this is, arguably the biggest name in the WHA at the time, Mr. Bobby Hull with the Winnipeg Jets. So pretty cool card there. This set is not my favorite design of any of the O-Pee-Chee WHA sets that exist. It's a little bit bland, just this kind of team banner on the left, player name, and then a basic photo. Almost all of these are like posed photographs like this in front of a backdrop, so not really that visually stunning, but an important card if we are going to touch on, or an important set if we are going to touch on the history of the WHA. Of course, there might have been other like local sets released and things like that, but really the intent of this episode is to focus on the major releases that occurred each year. And one card that I do want to note, and I've had this one in hand for a while and I've been waiting for a chance to show it off, and this episode was the perfect example of that. But one of the many cool things that happened over the history of that league is Gordie Howe came out of retirement and joined the WHA for the New England Whalers. And even better, eventually the Whalers, but he started out with the Houston Aeros. He played for a couple different WHA teams. But even better than that, 2 of his sons, Mark and Marty, were playing professionally in the WHA and also played for the Houston Aeros at the same time as Gordie. So you literally had a father and 2 sons on the same professional sports roster for hockey. And O-Pee-Chee made a card to commemorate that and actually made it card number 1 in their 74 O-Pee-Chee WHA set. The Howes, featuring Gordie, Mark, who also went on to be a Hall of Famer, and Marty, all for the Houston Aeros. So always thought this was a really, really cool 70s hockey card and one of the more unique and interesting Gordie Howe cards that's out there. I just love the familial connection here and hockey being passed down through the generations, and not sure we'll ever again see a father playing on the same line or on the same team as his son in the sport of hockey. I mean, that's just crazy. It's one thing to see it in baseball maybe, but in a full contact sport like hockey, I don't think we're ever going to see that again. So really cool card there that I wanted to kind of point out for the year 1974. Next, we move on to 75. And in 75, O-Pee-Chee again produced a standalone WHA hockey set. Here's a look at the design, which I think is quite nice. This is actually, I think, many people's favorite design of the handful of O-Pee-Chee WHA sets that exist. was this 75 release. So pretty neat. Love the Nordiques jersey on this Mark Tardiff. Haven't been showing the backs of many of these cards, but here's the back of the Tardiff, just in the interest of time. Very similar to 74 in that it was a standalone set. They weren't big sets. They were definitely always under 200 cards in size, and sometimes were under 100 cards in size. But just pretty cool that there was this rival league paralleling the NHL at the time, and was doing well enough, even though it was kind of falling apart at times, was at least doing well enough to be recognized by the folks at WHA and rewarded with a card set. Next, we move to 1976, and once again, WHA did a WHA dedicated set. And here's a look at the design that year, courtesy of twin brothers Chrysler and Tommy Abrahamson, who played for the New England Whalers. Pretty cool to see twins, a defenseman and a goalie, on the same team in the same league at the same time. And I became aware of these guys because alphabetically, when you're looking at the all-time Whalers roster, these guys are in the number one spot with the last name of Abrahamson. So pretty cool cards there. And again, I like the design. WHA was doing a pretty good job coming up with a unique design for the WHA set that differed from the hockey set. So other than that first year where they tacked them on to the end of the flagship set, all the other years that WHA made a WHA set, they did come up with their own unique card design. And while the backs are not all that exciting, the fronts are pretty good. I think this stands up with any NHL design from the 1970s and is in fact better than some of them. So pretty solid job there in 76. And there were all-star cards included as subset cards in some of these. So I wanted to just take a quick look at one of those. Here's an example of Gordie Howe's all-star card from 76. So same design as the base, but you can see they added that all-star banner, which is something that Topps and WHA did with hockey and baseball releases in the 1970s. So I thought that was pretty cool. Nice Gordie Howe there. And if you work on a Gordie Howe set registry on PSA, you do have to add or pick up these WHA cards. They do qualify for the Howe set registry because that was the league that he was playing in at the time, and they are recognized by PSA. And then finally in 1977, which was the penultimate year of the WHA, WHA released their final WHA hockey set. And again, it was a standalone set. It was a very small set, under 100 cards. And this is what the design of that final WHA WHA set looks like from 1977. This is Al Smith of the New England Whalers. I love the look of the goalie mask here and the brown pads. This has always been a favorite card of mine. That's why I have a graded example of it in the collection. Just, it's not a valuable card at all, but just a really cool one if you love old school, scary looking goalies. And pretty solid design. And then just to go with that one, here is another Hall of Famer from that final set, Mr. Bobby Hull, rocking his toupee for the Winnipeg Jets. Nice in-game action photo there. So by the end of the decade, or towards the end of the run of WHA sets anyway, WHA did give us some kind of in-game action shots at least. But that was it. That 77-78 release was the end of the line. I do have that entire set in a little small binder here, which I'll look at in some future video, but it's really not going to fit well on camera with all these other graded cards that I have in frame. So we'll save the 77 WHA set reveal and discussion for another day and kind of wrap up this overview. There was league play in 78-79, that final season, but there was no set created for that. It would be cool to see Upper Deck go back and kind of make a retro throwback 78-79 WHA release, but not holding my breath for that to happen anytime soon. But in the meantime, as I said, 4 teams did survive the WHA and merge in with the NHL to begin the 79-80 season. And among those teams was the Edmonton Oilers, which was very important because Wayne Gretzky joined the NHL at that point. And also my beloved Hartford Whalers were included in that alongside the Quebec Nordiques and the Winnipeg Jets. And here is a card from the 79 Topps, or WHA in this case, hockey set that shows or commemorates the Whalers entering the NHL via the folding of the WHA. So I thought that was kind of a cool way to end or try to wrap up the episode here. The league does live on to this day, as you know, obviously the Oilers are still a team. The other three teams that came over have since moved locations or changed names or both, but they're still part of the league to this day. So the impact left by the WHA was lasting and is still felt today by NHL fans. It did a lot of good with reserving or removing the reserve clause and getting players more money and getting them more fairly compensated. So it was a pretty cool experiment. And Mark Tardiff, in case you're curious, who I showed his 75 card earlier, he was the leading goal scorer over the history of the WHA. So he racked up more goals than anyone else in the league over his tenure in the WHA. He is the Wayne Gretzky, Alex Ovechkin of the WHA in that sense. And then the all-time leading point scorer for the WHA was Andre LaCroix, pictured here in a pre-WHA card for the 69 Philadelphia Flyers. He scored just shy of 800 career points, I believe, across the existence of the WHA. So he went down as the all-time WHA point leader. Was able to get this slab of his for like $10. So obviously not a lot of people paying as much attention to the WHA as I am, but I thought that was a cool pickup. I just wanted to add a card of the all-time point scorer in the WHA to the hockey collection. So picked that up this past summer. And then lastly, I'll leave you with anyone who is interested in doing a deeper dive into this portion of NHL history, and I can't recommend doing so enough because the stories are just comical and fascinating. I would highly recommend checking out this book, The Rebel League by Ed Wills. Just an awesome, awesome book. I've read this cover to cover at least twice. It's hard to put it down, and it's just filled with awesome, anecdotal tales of the wildness of that league in the 1970s. So that's a wrap for today. We're going to leave it there. Appreciate you stopping by, and I'll be back in the near future with some more sports card content. Till then, take care.